Douglas Moo says, and I quote, "For every trial brings temptation. Financial difficulty can tempt us to question God's providence in our lives. The death of a loved one can tempt us to question God's love for us. The suffering of the righteous poor and the ease of the wicked rich can tempt us to question God's justice or even His existence. Thus, testing almost always includes temptation, and temptation is itself a test. Persevering under a trial demands that we overcome temptations. The Old Testament often makes clear that God Himself brings trials into the lives of His people. God tested Abraham when He ordered him to sacrifice his son Isaac. He tested Israel by leaving the people surrounded by pagan nations. And He tested King Hezekiah by leaving him to his own devices in his reception of the Babylonian envoys. But while God may test His servants to strengthen their faith, He never seeks to induce sin and destroy their faith. Thus, it is crucial to distinguish the outer trial and the inner temptation. Well, isn't that God's fault anyway, because He puts us in that position to be tempted by the trial that proved too strong for us? In Genesis 3, we see Adam and Eve blaming God for their sin of eating the fruit of the tree, which God had commanded them not to. Adam said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit of the tree and I ate." And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate." If James had to answer this question, isn't this God's fault to put us in a vulnerable position to such a temptation? He would reply with a big no. He gives us two reasons for this in the same verse, verse 13b. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and He Himself tempts no one. First, God cannot be tempted with evil. The divine nature of God is of such untainted holiness that He cannot be tempted to sin. There is nothing within His whole nature to which any temptation could appeal to Him. Secondly, He Himself tempts no one. It is impossible for Him to cause us to sin. He is of such goodness in His character that there is no room for Him to tempt His people to sin. Temptation is an impulse to sin, and since God is not susceptible to any such desire for evil, He cannot desire that to be brought in man. R.C. Sproul, from a study on the holiness of God, points to how this attribute of God is emphasized in the Bible like no other attribute of His. Notice how the angels of God shout, "Holy, holy, holy," repeating thrice in the books of Isaiah and Revelation. No other attribute is repeated thrice like His holy attribute. So God's holiness is the center of His character, and it is impossible for Him to be tempted to sin or cause His people to be tempted to sin. Have a blessed day.